Viewers, welcome back to the PI show. We're talking about medical negligence. Now, ladies, why don't we do some case studies?
Sounds good.
I've got the first case is a lady who fell at home and split her head open, and she had a bleed. She went to hospital and she was in there for a few weeks. She had to go and have a shower, and instead of getting assisted to the bathroom, she went on her own. She fell over and fractured her wrist.
That's
Alice,
terrible.
what do you say?
Well, Tony, this is one of those very interesting cases where we have a person who's already staying in hospital. She's been in for a couple of weeks, clearly under the hospital's care. However, when she goes to the bathroom, she receives no assistance. Now, after a brain injury, that's quite interesting to me as a lawyer. And the other interesting thing is, what road do I go down as a lawyer? I do a couple of different type of cases in my practice, and we can say, well, one, it's a lack of care in a more sort of medical negligence sort of stream, or we could say, actually, it's the hospital's fault, for not having a safe premises, and it doesn't matter whether it's a patient or a guest,
Well,
they could fall
Nadia,
over.
Alice, can I just say this? Sounds to me the test on the hospital is a lot higher, because for her to go to the shower unassisted when she already had these problems,
Yes.
chances of proving negligence are a lot easier.
Well, I'd actually disagree with that, Tony. I would say it's a pretty hard job for me as a lawyer to prove that, because you need to prove a very high standard of care in medical negligence. Whereas in a public liability sort of occupiers liability context, it's a little easier to say, well, the hospital should have had a safe premises for anyone who might be around.
But
Sorry,
she's got a head
Alice,
injury.
but she's got a head injury. So we're saying two things here: that the hospital didn't have the right hand railings in the bathroom, or are we saying that they
We're
should
saying
have?
she should have been assisted to the bathroom.
Look,
Definitely.
I would agree, but are we talking about a lack of staff here at the hospitals? I mean, this is a high care patient. Surely she should have been looked after every sort of minute or checked up on.
Nadia, what if I tell you this? Going back years ago, a friend of mine, his father assisted him in moving some furniture. He started to get chest pains, went to hospital, they said he had a heart attack. So he's in a hospital bed and he has to go to the toilet, right?
Right.
Anyway.
So was he assisted?
No, he pressed the buzzer, no one came to get him. He went to the toilet and a short time later they found him on the floor, dead.
Right.
So
Wow.
the issue here is, you've got a problem. She's got a head injury.
We've got a few problems.
But I think the difference in this case is that, this lady, there were no handrails, there were no bath mats in this hospital. She walks into a tiled bathroom and has a shower, there's water on the floor, she's completely unassisted, and she has a fall and snaps her wrist. To me, I think that this is there is a lot of overlap here, and it's a very interesting case from that perspective. But I think,
should a hospital really ensure that every bathroom has handrails everywhere? I mean, how far do we go with this?
Nadia, she's got a head injury. You'd think that she's dizzy or she might be lightheaded. You don't know.
You
We
don't
don't
know.
know
And
the
she is a high care
circumstances.
patient from that perspective, I would say. But I would say also from a general safety point of view, I don't want to be going into a bathroom in a hospital and running the risk of falling over and hurting
So
myself.
how would you run the case? Is it more of a public liability thing, or is it more of
I'd be
a
going public
negligence
liability,
sort of?
Alice.
As a tactical point, Tony, I completely agree with you. Public liability, the test for whether or not the hospital is safe is a little easier to satisfy than the test for whether or not there's enough medical
And I
care
think you've got
involved.
a better chance here for the simple fact that she had the head injury. So I would think that liability is a lot easier. that
Yeah,
way.
I would say as a tactical measure, you'd go public liability. She has better chance that way.
We also need to satisfy the threshold of 5% for pain and suffering.
That's right.
Under the Wrongs
That's
Act.
exactly right.
So-
And she would have to do that either way. So that's a threshold you'd get over first. If she has an injury worth suing for, you then need to make a decision as a lawyer what's in her best interest.
We could be going on forever on this topic, but
Yeah.
let's go to the second case. I think it's a bit more interesting. This is a fellow that had an appendix problem.
That's right.
He initially had his abdomen trouble. He had pain around the abdomen.
That's right.
Did he see his doctor straight away?
He went to the GP
Yep.
and he was
That's right.
vomiting.
Okay.
Now, he went to the local hospital and they thought he had appendicitis. They examined him and said he had food poisoning. Now, how would you come to that conclusion, Nadia?
Well, it's quite common that sort of diagnosis is made, but I guess the simplest thing to do is get a blood test, because you'll find out if he did have an appendicitis or not. We're talking about, did the patient not really tell them exactly all his symptoms? Or are we saying a misdiagnosis? It's quite complicated.
But the
I
thing
don't want to
that's
pin it on
interesting
anyone.
is this. Wouldn't you ask him what he had to eat? Isn't it
Yeah,
as simple as that?
I don't know if it's that simple though.
Why?
Just
How
asking
long
someone
is
if
the food
it's.
in your
I guess
food poisoning. How long does it take to?
Well, they say it's a 24-hour, but it can last longer than that. It just depends how severe the bacteria infection is or the food poisoning is. But it's unusual. I think that the client must not have I think the symptoms are very similar between food poisoning and appendicitis, but to diagnose appendicitis, a simple blood test would rule in or out that diagnosis.
It's interesting you
And how
should
long does
say
it take
that.
for the result to come
Well, at a
back? Nadia?
hospital, it should be, you wouldn't be waiting all night.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me give you some more facts. Sorry.
That's all right.
The guy went home. His appendix burst. Went back to hospital. He waited another 13 hours.
Long time.
Yeah.
Very long time.
Had the operation to clean up a mess, apparently.
Yes,
right?
that's right.
Suffered an infection as a result, and he now suffers ongoing incisional hernia as a result of the treatment. What's that all mean?
A hernia, Tony, means when you have parts of your insides or your intestines poking out of a wound, whether or not that's a wound in your muscles from where they cut through to get to your appendix, or a wound in your skin as well, which is why it's called an incisional hernia.
That's right, Alice, but I think the issue also is he waited 13 hours, was it, Tony?
13 hours.
13 hours. We're sort of saying, had he been treated a bit sooner, would he have had to have that, more severe surgery, or would it have
That's
just
right.
been keyhole?
For the simple layman, let me explain this. If the appendix hadn't have burst, wouldn't it have just been a little incision? That's it.
Perhaps. I probably
Look,
should
it
have...
really depends
Yeah,
upon
on
the facts of the
person,
case.
yeah.
What's really interesting in this case is that after seeing his GP, the doctor wrote a note to the hospital to say, I think my patient has appendicitis. He goes to the hospital, they diagnose food poisoning, and he goes away and his appendix burst. And as a result of that, he needed to have what's called an open appendectomy instead of a keyhole procedure. Okay, so it's a bigger operation, there's a larger cut.
More risks
There's
involved.
more risks, more chance for things to go wrong.
So, can I ask you this? What's the negligence?
At the end of the day, Tony, we say it is a delay in diagnosis and also a problem with the follow-up care because of the way that the appendectomy wound was closed and the client continued to have problems afterwards, and this incisional hernia as well.
Nadia?
Sorry, Alice.
He said 4 operations post. He said 4 operations.
Yes, but how much of this is the patient not sort of screaming and yelling and saying, I'm really in pain, it's just not food poisoning, I haven't eaten any food that could have caused food poisoning. How much of it is partly his responsibility?
Nadia, can I answer that?
Yeah.
Why don't the doctors use a process of exclusion?
They probably
Talk about
did.
food poisoning, touch the abdomen, just go through it. Surely it can't be too many things they'd be looking for,
Well,
could it?
no, but it's a bit of both. It's the client or the person who's going or has been admitted saying little bit more about what his symptoms are, and then it's a little bit about the hospital. So
But the law says you take your victim as you find him. Why can't the doctor take his patient as he sees him?
because perhaps the diagnoses are very similar.
It's a very fraught issue.
We're going to have to go to a sponsors break, guys. Look, Alice, I want to thank you for coming on the show. You've been brilliant
Thank
as
you,
usual.
Tony. That's very
Nadia,
kind.
thank you very
Thanks
much.
very
We're going
much.
to Mailbank's
Thank
viewers,
you.
so please stay tuned. Don't go away. We'll be back very shortly. Thank you.
Thank you.